Hi, welcome to the show. Today we are going to discuss red flags today. Um and I might digress into red flags in general. But I'm going to try to stick specific to relationship uh or keep it in a relationship or dating context, especially dating, not really in a relationship, but I might digress into it like I normally do. Um, but before, and I am going to go, I'm sure my mind's going to take me into red flags with everyone, not just in a female that we're dating. You should be aware of red flags everywhere in your profession, with your friends and family, with people you interact with, non-romantically, because that matters as a female in a relationship. And sometimes it could be even more because depending on what you do, a lot of men spend more time at work. So if you allow people around you at work where you spend most of your time, and you don't check these people with the red flags at work, you're going to develop these habits. You're going to pick up or kind of let yourself be okay with it. Like you'll take that into your own personal life, and you'll won't recognize red flags, or you might recognize them, but if you don't act upon them, you'll never. You'll just let people one walk all over you, and you'll just have the wrong people in your life. And that's the last thing you want to do, is waste the years of your life in failed friendships, in failed business ventures, in jobs that suck the life out of you. Um, and sometimes it's not even the job, it's just the people around you. And you have to check them and deal with those red flags. But it's important to understand that red flags, I know it's popular to attach it to relationships, but it's attached to it. Red flags are everywhere with everyone, and you just have to kind of have your standards, your boundaries, and what you can tolerate and what you won't tolerate, what you're flexible on, but what you're definitely unflexible on. And you have to kind of judge that stuff throughout your life. And you're going to have to incorporate some of that stuff, like in your business. If there's too many red flags at the place you work, you could either stay there and get the money because you just succumb to that idea that this is the best you could do until you either get fired or forced to look for another job. And when you do that, you succumb to all the negative that's there. There's people that you don't get along with, that cross your boundaries, that put touch you a certain way, and not by touch you physically, just touch those buttons a certain way, and you don't address it. You're just gonna become older and bitter and nastier, and you'll just develop low self-esteem, and it'll just continue. This snowball effect will continue. Whereas what you should do is quit, find another job that's mentally more healthy for you than having to always be in a negative state. Because you want to be in a positive state as much as you can, for as many hours, days, months, years as you can. Digressing too much. I want to kind of just stick to my series idea, which is dating and relationships. So we'll try to keep them to that. So Google it, put red flags in relationships, or what are red flags in relationships, what are red flags in dating, what are red flags in women, what are red flags in men, what are red flags at just about anything. And like most everything that I'm going to mention, you get bombarded with it through just the technology. The information that's out there is ever growing, right? So many new opinions, the same opinions being regurgitated, and you'll get ideas and lists and signs and everything of what to look out for. So what are red flags in dating? It's subjective. It's in individual case basis, because what are red flags to me might not be red flags to you, even though people would have you believe that it's the same all the way around or all the way across, and it's not. It's subjective. Because some people might tolerate a more, and not saying that that's good or not, but you can't force people to to see the red flags that you see. So it's you have to ask yourself first, like, understand what are red flags, and red flags are just, negative marks, stuff, that warning signs, like just what the it's when you see a red sign, you know you're coming up to a cliff, just like a stop sign. It's red. That's where the term came. Just negative signs that you see in something. And like I said in the beginning dialogue, that I said, not even just in the relationship aspect, but in every aspect of our lives, we should be aware of the red flags. It's going to save you time. It's going to save you effort. But so anyway, it's basically stuff that you should be aware of and should not tolerate. Now, just because you see a red flag doesn't mean that you don't proceed with caution. But it's something that you should definitely be aware, so then you're not surprised for an action that will occur later on. So if I see a red flag and I'm going mountain climbing, I could still proceed, but it's gonna be in my own peril, and with caution, because if something happens later on down my descent or upset or my climb, whatever, and I get hurt, if I'm a normal thinking person, I'm not gonna get mad at the mountain and try to sue, like, the association of whatever people protect that mountain. No, I knew the risk, and I chose to accept those risks, and I moved forward, and I became aware that something can happen, and it's going to be by my own doing. So by all means, I mean, don't get it confused. I'm not saying you have to, you see a red flag, stop, turn around. By all means, continue. And for the most part, a lot of people do continue. Hence why we have so many hurt people still out in the dating world or in relationships that are ignoring too many flags. Ignoring 1, 2, maybe even 3 flags. It's okay, because no one is perfect. And it has to be on a spectrum on what's more important, what's on the top of that list of what matters to you, and what is on the bottom of what doesn't matter. And if it lands on those bottoms, you could overlook them, because there's higher qualities that kind of balance it out. But if there are too many, negatives, it could just be draining. It could be just a waste of effort and a lot of anger, resentment, just negative feelings. And for a lot of people, it leads to a negative view on dating, a negative view on relationships, and can hurt themselves and lead to physical harm on not only the other person but themselves, or the female, and us. It's just basically, like I said, negative. Red flags are just negative attributes, depending on what you would consider negative attributes on another person. Why they matter, I hinted at a little bit. Just, it saves you time. You get, not saves you time. What I meant to say is that Red flag shows you the issues with someone. But again, the reason you see issues with someone or something is because you have a set either standard boundary or something, a preconceived idea of something. So when it matters is when you have a definite boundary. So if it's important in this dating, let's say in dating, if it's important that your date is a sweet person, a sweet feminine woman, and you take her out to eat, and the first thing she does when the waiter comes is start becoming aggressive, that's a red flag. So that could be considered a red flag. To some men, they don't really care because they're kind of that kind of way too, rude, abrasive. So again, not to everyone, that would be a red flag. To most, I would think that should be a red flag. But again, depending on your way of thinking, and maybe you're dating up, or it's a girl out of your league, or what you deem out of your league, you put up with stuff like that. When in reality you shouldn't, and you take action, and for that instance, you would not in front of the waitress because you don't want to embarrass the girl in front of other people, but once the waitress leaves after the grabbing of the order or whatever, you could lean over real quick, grab her by the hand and say, hey, I don't think it was cool that how you treated her, how you talked to her, it came off a little bit rude. And if she reacts in a positive way and says, oh, I didn't know I was doing that, or she comes off as no defensive, like justifying her actions, even though for sure she was overstepping, was being disrespectful. That's a red flag, and the way you address it is in that manner. And if she chooses to confront you in it or defend her position, then not to proceed. Most men won't. Most men, you continue to date. Again, I think I've said that before on a few podcasts. You continue to date. You be a gentleman. You already invited her out. It took her time, the same as much as you. So you continue to date and you finish the motion. If once you acknowledge or try to correct it, not even correct it, but you bring it up to her attention that for you it's uncomfortable for her to talk to a stranger that way. And I know if you go around the dating circle on YouTube or Google, it's one of those signs where a red flag in dating is, so if you see a girl or us being rude to the waitress or the staff, it's a red flag to not date that person, because obviously that's not the way you should act, and there's underlying issues. But that's just one little example of many reasons why red flags should matter. It matters because you will hopefully have your standards and boundaries, and when people cross them. You don't want those habitual line steppers. If you have habitual line steppers around you, and that's the majority of people that like to push your buttons and cross that line, you need to change that and not be afraid of the consequences. And I'm saying this or I'm talking, I know that this is supposed to be about dating and relationships, but in anything, if it's family and friends, if boundaries are being stepped on, you have to correct that behavior. The first is communicating. Once that communicating has been exhausted, which is it only should take 1 or 2 times. After that, it's on you to remove yourself. And however that form takes or leads, that's however it needs to happen. And you can't back away from it. And the same thing going back to dating and relationships. You can't be afraid to walk away. That's the only way you're going to get what you want and the caliber of girl that you want. Is it going to be a tedious process? Yes, it is. I can't sugarcoat it. It's going to be tedious, because if you're looking for quality, and most people are damaged according to the data. Most people are damaged. They have issues, the way society is from childhood. You're going to have to reject a bunch of people, but a lot of people don't, and they settle. The majority of people settle, as opposed to rejection. It's rare when you find people that know what they want and are steadfast in that way. And if you cross that line or that boundary, that's it. There's no going back from it. And that's the kind of selectiveness that we have to have. And you could call that seeing red flags. I rather call it, like I said, selectiveness. So you know that, hey, I like a woman that's punctual. I like a woman that's feminine. I like a woman that, if we argue, she communicates. If I'm doing something incorrect, that she corrects it, or not corrects it, but brings it up to my attention, so I could then adjust to whatever her language or our language is, because everyone's different. The connections are different. The if you believe in energy, it's different, but we try to make it compatible. We try to make it as one, and it's a process. But the process is only going to be legit if you are true to yourself. And that means that sometimes with family, friends, women that we find completely attractive, with the people that raised us, with the siblings that we grew up with, sometimes it has to be, the drastic has to be done, and cutting those people off, or not even cutting those people off, just separating yourself from that kind of energy, where yes, you're going to be loving and you care for them and all that, but you're going to do it from a distance. You're going to remove yourself and just kind of try to be an example and have them switch over through the example that is you. And there's no difference in the way we should have that with women that we meet, and the standards, not only in the dating, but in the relationship and marriages and whatever. It should still be not only maintaining our red flags, but sometimes adapting and developing new red flags that we're going to see, because it's forever changing. No one's perfect. No one knows exactly 100% this works 100% of the time. There's no such thing. So it's understanding that why they matter. There is no downfall to why they matter. They just make the quality of women that you're choosing from that much more elite, that much more better, that much more, hey, you're not just any, Miss Jane. You're unique so-and-so. You're just not every other Rachel. You are unique to this, because you were able to not have as many red flags as they say. I say you just being selective, that your selection is so high standard that when a woman meets those standards, you're getting quality. Like buying those expensive whatever that lasts years, that leather jacket, 100% leather that you buy that lasts like 30, 50 years, whatever. That's why it's important. It's important in every aspect of our life, but it's super important, and it's also important, I don't know, say make it super more than family or friends or whatever, or job, but it is important, if not as important as each one of those, as to why it matters. It just shortens whatever distance and keeps your standards high. Another thing about red flags is how what to look for. And again, this if you're looking for a list, maybe I'll do one on my 5 signs series about red flags and what to look for. It's individual. I was gonna say, don't look to anyone else. Look first, find if you have standards, and you for the most part know what you like, what you'll tolerate, what you don't. You have to, that's your baseline. It has to matter to you. If you're looking at videos, if you're going on what bothers someone else is, what upsets someone else, and you're making those like, oh, here's 5 red flags that to look out for in a woman, right? And let's say you agree with 2 out of the 3, not all of them, but you've already been polluted. You've already been, infused with someone else's idea the moment that you clicked on that video and you started hearing the message. So what all of those signs, to him it matters, but to you it might not. So when you go and say, okay, this woman has these two but not these other three, not, and then you force yourself to see, well, does she really not have them? You don't go to the positive one, you go to the negative one, and then you develop a negative mindset, but you still continue with the courtship and the hooking up and so on and so forth. So you, by doing that action, you forced yourself into a mental state of seeing the woman in a negative light because of the voice that you heard that told you the 5 signs to look for in a woman. And there's hundreds of reasons. So 5 is just a minuscule reason. I think someone said that you have to find like the ones that matter the most and what matters the least, because if you just disqualify everyone off the red flags, no one will be together. Because some stuff, it's annoying, but you could live with it. But you have to have those deal breakers. Those, like if there was a combo breaker, if there was a video game, you have to have that combo breaker where they're like they're hitting you with shot after shot. You do a quick, upside XX, triangle, and you combo breaker. I'm sure I gave it the wrong control management for that combo breaker, but you have to be able to have that and be able to cut cord. So it's whatever it is to you, specific to you, like everything. If it matters to you because you lived your own unique life, if it matters enough to you to fight, whatever it is in your individual right, it has to start there. But have something. Don't just go into it nothing, because you end up wasting decades of your life, years of your life, not having a standard, a passing grade. Like you have to have a C to pass. You have to have that at least a minimum. Like, back in my days, it used to be a D. You had to have a D minus to cross over to the next grade, until I think George Bush, someone changed it, and then they just passed you. I can't remember who it was. It didn't matter if you were an F student; they just passed you. Probably Clinton. But anyways, what the point being, men should have a minimum grade, a minimum standard, and then that's when you start paying attention to what to look for, and what to look for is them not stepping over those standards. They could step over it once, maybe twice. Anything more than that, they're habitual line steppers, and you want to remove them from your life. How to deal with red flags? You take action. Whatever action that is, again, it's subjective, but you have to take action. If it's a red flag, a legit red flag, not a made up red flag, and if it's a made up red flag, before you go and accuse anyone, you check yourself. If you don't have proof, then you go back to yourself. You kind of turn inwards and say, am I looking at, was she really rude to the waitress? Did she really not call me because she was out with another dude, and maybe she was just really busy? So you don't deal with everything the same way, because everything is unique, but you do deal with it. Like I said, that part that I just said right now was more, how to return it to you without accusing someone. Because once you say something, it's the same with the text. Once you press the send button, it's gone. Once you say something to someone, you can't unsay it. It's in their head. It's in their memory. You can't say, I take it back. No. You can't take it back. You just have to deal with the red flags. If it's on a date and you're going out and she crosses that line, like in the restaurant scenario, you check her. You have to check her and say, hey, that's not good. That's not cool. That that you're treating the staff that way. Let's say in another scenario, you want her to. It's important for her to pay half the meal after a certain while. Hopefully you follow enough of the date progression that you've been. You already hooked up and now you're going to a few more dates, but now you want her to pay up or start paying half or whatever. It's a red flag if she doesn't, for sure. The way you deal with it is you bring it up. Say, hey, you know what? We've been dating. I think it's important and I want to continue this, but I think it's important for me. It's important anyways that a woman that I'm interested has equal investment in this relationship. And just put those going off. I'm not saying maybe the whole thing or half the thing or whatever. I'm saying just some, so I know there's some kind of investment that you're doing, because a lot of women think that because they give it up or you've slept, that's their investment. Sadly, in these modern days, that's just not feasible anymore as far as that way of thinking. It can be depending on the female and her situation and whatnot. There is definitely variable, but you bring it up and you tell her, hey, it's important for me and to pay. So if she's receptive to him, say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean for you to think that's what I was doing. Definitely glad. Thank you so much. From now on, we'll split 50-50. And then you could finagle and make, don't ever try to cover it up and then say, I'm going to pay for everything. Once you bring it up, accept something, like maybe 25% of the bill, not the whole thing. Maybe, if you pay, she pays a tip, something where she's contributing to the both of you getting to know each other. If she flips out and gives you like this speech about all men should and makes it just difficult to even bring up the topic, that's a red flag, right? Because it's going against what you want to happen. And then once if she's flipping out on you, you don't continue the engagement. That's when most people continue that argument. If your standards are high enough, that's a disqualifier. Not only is she maybe arguing really loud, depending, or maybe if she even isn't and is doing it in a low voice, you're still in public and she's still choosing to act out or respond in a negative manner to that kind of subject. That's a definite red flag. Her correct reaction should be accepting of that, even if she doesn't agree, even if she wants you to be old school traditional. The correct response, if she doesn't agree, is to say, okay, thank you for letting me know. I believe, or I want a traditional relationship where a man pays for everything and I get taken care of. Once that is established, trust me, there's more than enough men, and many men in the MGTOW movement that have girlfriends and are straight up that their wife is like that, submissive, feminine, obedient, whatever you want to call it, or whatever they're specifically looking for or found or whatnot. And if that's the case, I have absolutely no problem. They pay for everything. They pay for the nails. They pay for the dinners. They pay for the trips. They pay for her wardrobe. The whole thing. But as long as that understanding is there as to, hey, this is what anyways, I'm digressing too much, but that's a healthy response to her. She doesn't acknowledge it there. She might bring it up like that, but then that conversation that I just had about what she wants, she'll just continue that. She'll hint at it there, and she said, we could talk about this in the car. She'll be like, well, look, I'm expecting more of a traditional relationship, but we're out in public. I don't think we should talk about this. We could talk about it when we get back in the car. Boom. When you get back in the car, that's when she'll bring it up, and she should discuss about what she is. She should never cause a scene in public, and you should never tolerate anyone causing a scene in public. In this scenario, it's also a kind of a shit test for her, as is popularly known, where you put her on the spot and see how she reacts in public. If you notice, a small red flag. Like I said, the name of the game is how many red flags can you tolerate, right? At least that's what the name of the game is. So, how to deal with them? Again, you want to be direct, and you want to definitely not be moving too much or forgiving too much of the times when people cross over a boundary. Because again, every time they do that, one or two times, it's okay. More than that, it's habitual. It's a form of abuse. So and you're causing it to yourself, as opposed to having a high enough self love to just put that person, and you don't gotta get rid of them, but you definitely have to pause them and move them to a different kind of a zone. I just hit my thing, to a different kind of a area where they have to now regain some kind of trust to be allowed the privileges that you once had that they now don't, because they're refusing to work on those things that bother you. However you want to look at them. So recognizing before any of this, and I probably should have started with this. And actually, you know what? Let me continue to the next one, and then I'll end with this one, and it'll make more sense than doing it now. But another point is ignoring them. I think I hinted at them. You're only ignoring red flags at your own peril. The longer you ignore, the more they pile up. The more you start making excuses. By the time you're just wasting memory, effort, time you could be building with someone else. Ignorance is not bliss in this instance, because you could be ignorant to the fact that she might be promiscuous and ends up cheating on you later on, like 4 years down the line, and you knew this going into the relationship, or early on in the relationship, or 2 months into the relationship, or a year into the relationship, or 2 years, but you kept on being ignorant and ignoring it, and you just wasted years. Because why? You got random hookups because she was really, really hot, because she gave you money, because I don't know what reason is. I mean, there's a lot of reasons, and I'm surprised every time I live one or I hear about one. And I lived to some pretty interesting ones, because I've been on both sides. Now I enforce my boundaries, but like most of us, we are in those blinders, ignoring phase, where we don't want to pay attention, or we're not smart enough to understand what we're seeing, or whatnot, or we just choose to be deliberately ignorant and are just deliberately blind because we think the reward is better than the pain. And as we learn in life, it's not. So ignoring the red flags or stuff that crosses your boundary is, you're only hurting yourself. You're not hurting the other person. You're hurting yourself. You're wasting time. You're wasting energy. And if you're hearing this, that means you're in a different place mentally, and you probably are realizing that the enforcement of boundaries and having the red flags, whatever it is to you, like I said, don't take anyone's list as being your list. Is just a list, and if you find moral compatibility with some things in their list, by all means adapt them to you. But their signs are not your signs, because your taste is not their taste. You might like certain kind of girls. You might like certain style of girls. You might like aggressive girls. You might like really, masculine females. You might like really feminine females. I don't know, what kind of, you might like loyalty, but to some, loyalty might not really matter. Affection, whatever it might be. Punctuality, I know, is important to a lot of men, but I also know just as many men that they don't really care. They make a date for 7. Next thing you know, they're showing up around 9. So, but if you're ignoring, again, we all, at the end of the day, we're all gonna have to ignore some, but we want to ignore as few as possible because they have more great qualities and not that many red flags that are going to have us wondering, second guessing, accusing, and all that stuff. How to fix red flags? You don't. At least not in any other people. Right? You can't fix someone. You can only acknowledge them in your sentence saying this is bothering me, because they might not see their actions as a red flag. This might just be a part of who they are, and whoever they, in their mind, they have these standards and red flags that they're looking, and it just might be a misconnection in ethics and the way we see life and the way values develop. And so you don't fix people's red flags. You don't even try or attempt. The whole premise of this whole thing of red flags is that you're in control. You see the red flags, you remove yourself because that person is not qualified, has too many defects, has too much stuff to work on to be allowed to proceed to start earning time to spend with you. Enough of this wasting time. You have to show enough value for me to commit my time to you, for you could then increase the value of my time that I spend, because your company, your whatever with me is just adding to my time that's already valuable, and you're just making it even that more valuable because you bring so little baggage and enhancing my life. That's the key. But you don't focus on fixing anyone, because to my last point is, if you are going to fix any people's red flags, it's going to be your own. Recognizing your own red flags first. That should have been number one on this list. Before anything, you have to make sure that you're loyal, that you're punctual, that you're loving, that you're devoted, that you're cherishable, that you're giving, that you're understanding, that you're flexible, pliable, that you're compromising. Once you acknowledge that you're not some of these things that are important to yourself, you first have to acknowledge those in you before you start demanding them in everyone else. Because if you're a piece of shit, but if you're expecting someone to be a princess, or a female to be a princess, how could you if you're a piece of shit? Right? We could get into the whole bad boy discussion, and we're not, or guys that are a piece of shit, but that's not even the way that the thought process is happening. And if you guys think that's the way, you guys have it all messed up. If I expect perfection, then I better be striving for perfection or be perfect. Right? If I want someone to continue to try in the relationship, then I must continue to try in the relationship. I must continue to date her. If she qualifies herself over and over and over again and passes everything, it's my job to, court her, or to keep this relationship exciting and happy. If she keeps on meeting my standards, and then not only meeting them and surpassing them, because at the end of the day, like I said earlier, the only red flags that you can really control are your own. You will always want to communicate to someone when those red flags or something about them is bothersome, to hopefully we mean enough to them that they'll acknowledge it in a positive way and then take actions to modify that, where they might still have it, but to a point where you're tolerable a bit of it, or they completely change. But you must first not be hypocritical and recognize the red flags in yourself before you start recognizing those red flags in everyone else. And we see that like a lot. Do as I say, not as I do. So I expect you to be loyal, but I could cheat. I expect you to be feminine, but I can't be masculine. I expect you to, do certain things and act certain ways, but I don't do certain things and act certain ways. So if there's not a full commitment or a full, I don't want to say just a full partnership, or at least a good flow of communication, and recognizing, hey, we're not perfect, but we're gonna we both find value in each other, so we're both gonna be able to communicate our flaws, and not in a negative, it's in a loving way, to build ourselves to have the best possible odds to communicate and date properly and court properly and go through the motions properly. It allows me to be the man that you're looking for, and it allows her to be the female that you're looking for. And again, whatever female that is all to you. But before you start Googling signs to look for, and once you well, let's say once you even Google that, and you Google and you find those, before you start adapting them to your girlfriend, your wife, the girl you like, your coworker, your whatever, see if you have any of those signs first. And if you do have any of those signs first, that's a clear indication that you should work on them. You should work on yourself first. You're not even healthy to start dating. You're not even healthy to be out in the dating game, and you're just giving the dating game a bad name. So stay on the sideline. Figure that out first, so that when you do get in the game, you know the playbook, and you're physically and mentally prepared for the gruel that is the dating season. And you guys know dating season is 365, 24/7 if you're in that game and single. So you have to be physically fit and mentally fit to just deal with the grind, the ups and downs, the horror stories, and the success stories, the stories that make you cringe, and the stories that make you say, damn, that's beautiful. But recognize it in yourself first before you start projecting outward. Hope you guys found value in this episode. Like always, thank you. Like, share, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications to stay updated when I upload videos. Thank you guys for listening.